Hey guys, how's it going? It's Chris here. Today we're going to be answering another question on YouTube. I just recorded this response, but oh my god. But it was like 12 minutes long for a very straightforward question. I went into a whole fucking tangential response, which is what I always do. But the question is I was gonna put every question as a title, but this question's way too long, so I'll have to abbreviate it or something. Comes from the same person, Corn 1006 or 1006 or 106 or 1006. There's a billion ways to go about that. But the question is, did you think you'd have written as many books as you have when you started the Vengeance series? And then a follow-up, how many books do you anticipate being in the series? The short answer, which will lead directly into a long answer, is I did not think there'd be this many books in the series. I originally wrote it to be one book. Again, let's go into humble beginnings. This is what it was. 40 or so page short story. This is all that the book series was supposed to be. But then, of course, I got manic. And I started asking myself too many questions about the story and the characters, and I, of course, had to answer those questions. But I didn't just have to answer them. I couldn't just fantasize about them. I had to make them canonical, and I had to just write them down. So I did, and the book expanded, and it got to where it was in 2015 at about 300 or so pages, 300 or 400 pages, I don't remember. And then, boom, it ended, and I was like, all right, how it ended is relatively similar to how this one ended, but to how it ends now, except no epilogue or anything like that. Like the main character ends up where she does in the same like last page, kind of thing. So, and I was content in leaving it there, vague on what happens next, if anything at all, because I didn't anticipate me writing more books. And I left it there, and it just kind of like fermented for a little bit until I just kept thinking and thinking and thinking and realized I have more to say. I have more to do with these characters. I want to clean it up. I want to make it better. I want to refine it. And I just graduated, so the fuck else am I going to do with my time? Besides play Call of Duty and Halo and wish I could skateboard still. So in my off time, I just thought about it. I was at work, and as I was at work, my brain just started spinning, and I just kept writing notes, and then those notes needed, characters were given more details about their lives and whatever, and then I was improving book one. But then I had the ideas for, well, where did Destro come from? What's his and Felix's backstory? What about Lucy? Why is Lucy's ghost reaching out to Kim? Because a lot of those things I wrote as just like, ooh, this is kind of creepy and ominous, but it had no fucking answer. There was no reason for that to exist besides trying to like hint at stuff and lead the character in a certain direction, and also just to kind of haunt Kim and make her daily life more tragic for the readers. It was all about making her life fucking horrible for the readers, which at the end of it, her life wasn't even the worst. I mean, overall, sure, but like her circumstances weren't the worst. Even she was like maybe number 4 on the list for worst circumstances for Tuffle, insemination. But yeah, so as I was thinking about like, oh, I want what's Destro's backstory, and I would think about some stuff of how he got to where he was, and then I realized like, well, obviously I can't insert this into the book. It's too bloated. I can't do that. So it was on a separate document, and then those turned into their own kind of short stories, and then that kind of helped me fill out more details as well in the book about the characters. But it was always a thing of like, if you want to learn more, I have these side things, and they were very rough, and they're still very rough. They're still, I consider them to be incomplete, but and then I was, on that same train of thought, I was like, oh, what's Alex's backstory? And I want to give more details to Kim's mother and her dad and how they got to where they are and all that stuff. So I started writing out scripting things for transgression, and then, at some point down the line, Chrism got added, which then added more lore and mystery to Sin in their relationship, and why because Sin was supposed to be just an enigmatic, malignant figure, just something to oppose Kim, just a goal to overcome. whatever, just a force that got her to where she is so she could do the things that she was going to do and have her whole story arc. He was not ever really supposed to have any kind of full written out backstory. And which is where we got into me going over a lot of the potential backstories, because as I inserted Chrism into the story, that just begged so many more questions about their relationship and their past and just who they were, even though it was never intended for them to really have an answer. So yeah, and then it just kind of snowballed, and I just kind of kept going back and forth between them all, and then eventually, as I got all this other world building done, I realized that no, this book one's finished, but the story isn't done. All this ancillary content, all these ideas are going to culminate into the world and spawn a sequel. And I originally had a sequel. I'm not going to get into it. It was so bad. I literally am too embarrassed to even talk about it. Plus, I can't remember all the details. But, yeah, has nothing to do with the sequel now. Because the book wasn't the same. The story wasn't the same. No characters had depth when I wrote this sequel. But yeah, and then the other part of that is how many books do you anticipate being in the series? So yeah, I only ever anticipated there being one, and then it turned into 1 plus 2 side stories, and then it turned into 1, 2 side stories, and then a prequel story, and then it turned into book 2, and now here I am writing another prequel sequel story. Yeah, so it was never intended to go past 1. And that was only ever really intended to be this, and obviously we see how that went, because I am mentally ill. Sorry, I'm looking at it on my screen. How many books do you anticipate being in the series? It's difficult, because the Origins anthology is technically 2 books, just kind of put into one, because they're both shorter. Currently, there's book 1, Impurity, Hebeloma, Transgression, Devil to the Damned, and Cataclysm, and Dogma. I always forget about Dogma, because I consider that book to be relatively incomplete as well, because it's very much like scene by scene that you're not necessarily living in. There's no there's few moments of real-time dialogue, and it's mostly just recounting that little short plot, the short plot, the birth of the universe and the creation of gods. It's all Dogma is, don't worry about it. It just lays the foundation of literally the existence of the world. So that's what did I say? So book 1, book 2, Cataclysm. Book 1, book 2, Transgression, Devil to the Damned, Impurity, Hebeloma, Dogma. That puts us at 7 total stories, 3 of which I would consider to be incomplete books, and then the rest are full actual books to be read in the series. I'm obviously working on 2.5, potentially a 2.75, or there's a precursor to 3, and then 3. So that puts 10 stories, and then some of them being smaller books or whatever have you. Shut up, I know. Be quiet, phone. Sorry. Oh no. Menus. Yeah, and I anticipate there being 10 or so total, and then if I still continue writing after that for this series, I have the side story Geist, and then there's so many stories. Side story Geist, which kind of plays into basically giving the readers more context of how the ditch works when a soul goes to the ditch and how it breaks you down, by introducing us and showing us the character Gier, or the Tuffle's host, the Tuffle Gier, his host, that guy, and how he got to where he was and whatever have you. And Gier is from Hebeloma. He's the one that attacks Lyomik under the bridge after she rises from the fucking dead. Lyomik's a zombie, kinda. So, and I also had at some point, Chrism's backstory. Chrism and Christine, same character, but kind of 2 different characters, were both supposed to have their own backstories, their own separate book, short story backstories. And then you were supposed to have Ken and Magcrow as one. You were supposed to have their backstory as a separate, smaller book. And those things obviously got combined all into Devil to the Damned and Cataclysm. You got their backstories explained and lived through in those books. So there's been so many like little character stories that were integrated and assimilated into other works, into mainline books. So in reality, there's over 10 books that I had planned on writing at some point, some being way shorter than others, some being really long, and some being not really needed. And then you had, Kari's backstory, which was a very short thing. And then you had Sin, all of his backstories. And so there's so many, but they all got compressed down into mainline books. So I anticipate there being like 7, well, for mainline books that I would say you need to read to get the full story is book 1, Devil to the Damned. Alright, book 1, Transgression, Devil to the Damned, Cataclysm, and then book 3, I'd say the 5 mainline books, you need these for the full story. I guess you technically don't need Transgression, so it would be a quadrilogy? Quintilogy? Whatever those are, I don't know. But then, if you want to count them all, book 1, Hebeloma, Impurity, Devil to the Damned, Transgression, book 2, well, I'm sorry, wait, my brain, I just got lost. Book 1, book 2, Transgression, Devil to the Damned, Hebeloma, Impurity, Dogma, book 3, 2.5, and then 2.75 or whatever, Gier, or Geist rather. So like 11 total stories, and I don't plan on writing Geist, but if you want to include that. So, yeah, that's pretty much the answer to that. It still took 12 minutes to record this, but this was way more on track than the previous recording. Trust me, you did not want to see that video. It was bad. So, yeah, I hope that answered that question. And, leave any more you have down in the comments below. I have questions for everybody too. I real quick, I had somebody who just finished book 1 recently, one of my friends, somebody from my work, and she was saying she loved the ending, and I had to bite my tongue so hard of just like throwing her 25 questions of favorite character and all this other stuff, just like, what did you think about this? What are your thoughts about this? But I have so many questions for people. Like, I just want to talk and get their feedback. I want to know. She did say something that, she hopes, she's curious about Tansu's past outside of the things about like her mom and dad. And I realized just like, she doesn't have a whole lot. Tansu had a very boring life before anything. Like she was just in school with her family, and they moved here because of a tragedy. And like, that's really it. She doesn't have a complicated backstory. She's a complicated character in her own right, but like, I was kind of thinking like, I hope she's not gonna be disappointed because, Tansu's not secretly a Tuffle. I've had people say that. I've had people say that Tansu was secretly a Tuffle the whole time. It's like, oh, that would have been weird. Or Joey was, or something, like Joey was a spy or something like that. But yeah, I don't know. Anyway, that's gonna do it. I gotta go take a hot steaming shit. Bye.